gave me about 2 paragraphs on her credentials, but for most of you, or some of you that do not know Sarah Kyle, she is a tremendous asset to our community here in Gladwin County and in Clare County. Sarah Kyle is the Chief Prevention Coordinator for the Clare and Gladwin counties. Her work revolves around helping our communities become places where young people are encouraged to remain drug and alcohol free. Her involvement in her community includes board positions for Big Brothers Big Sisters, the 211 program, Gladwin County DARE, and the Clare Gladwin Regional Educational Board of Education. Sarah has also presented at state conferences for both mental health and substance abuse professionals, and has testified in the Michigan State Representatives health policy concerning prescription drug abuse. In addition to those things, I can tell you from the court perspective, and I know the Judge Meek is here as well, I know that Sarah has been a valuable asset to us. We hosted a community symposium at Mid-Michigan Community College in June, and she was absolutely awesome. We had over 200 people from both communities had shown up for the event, and so we're pleased to have her in our community and on our side helping all of us. And I'd also, before we begin, like to introduce some individuals that have come out this evening. As I mentioned, we do have your 55th Circuit Court Judge Roy Mink, and if each of you could stand. We also have Tara Habib, who is a judicial candidate for the probate court and is a board member with the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. We have Maureen Barney McGuire from the Shelter House program. Maureen, saw Maureen. We also have John Schaefer that's with us from EMS. Thank you, John. All right, so without further ado, I will turn things over to Sarah Kyle. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a little nervous because as soon as I walked in the building, the mic stopped working. This is the second computer, so just bear with us, okay? Today I'm going to talk about 3 specific drugs: prescription drugs, bath salts, and K2 spikes. There are lots of things we could talk about. In fact, still the #1 killer of Americans is tobacco products. But most of us have seen commercials, most of us know about those things. So we're going to focus on these 3. Prescription drugs, they did a survey of adults in the northern Michigan region, from Midland on up to the tip of the Mid. And about 40% of adults admit to sharing prescription meds, which is a very scary statistic. Sharing prescription meds very likely can be illegal. It's dangerous. It can be a really serious health hazard, but a lot of people do it. For example, even in my own family, I've seen, man, I have a headache, and Aunt so-and-so says, well, I have a Vicodin in my purse. And I'm like screaming, that's a federal offense. What are you doing? That's a drug you're willing to share. A doctor prescribed it for you. We do know that abuse is anytime someone takes a drug that is not prescribed to them or takes it in a way that was not prescribed. We're going to go over some safety talks about prescription drugs, including monitoring and securing. All drugs need to be monitored. You need to know what you have in your house. You need to know how many pills are in each bottle. You need to know how much cough medicine is in each bottle that you have. You need to know what the expiration date is on all of your medicine. A lot of us keep medicine in, we have no idea how old it is. A lot of medicine expires in about a year, and after that it can become very dangerous. We also need to secure all the medicine we have in our house. And I mean all medicine, even something as simple as vitamins, they all need to be secured. Unfortunately, a few years ago, we had a young person who was rushed to the emergency room because he had overdosed on estrogen replacement therapy. He thought he was taking grandma's painkillers, but he's a young person, he didn't really know, and he had just taken a handful of pills. We should lock up everything that we have to make sure that no one can get their hands on them. Our kids, strangers who come in our home. One thing I like to show people is 1016 had a client who was taking 30 to 40 painkillers a day, which is very dangerous. It could kill a large animal. If you took 30 a day, this is about 900 pills. He was taking 900 pills a month. He never had a prescription. He was an expert at finding these in your home. A good-looking, nice guy who you would have, yeah, of course, come on, use my phone. He might be a friend of yours. A lot of people put their medicine in their bathroom, unfortunately, which is the one place we allow people to go without, observing them. I hope you're not observing them. So we want to make sure that all of our medicines are in a place where we're going to know if someone has their hands on them, because we want to make sure to keep them out of the hands of someone who should not be taking them. We need to properly dispose of our medicine. We used to be told, and in fact I used to volunteer at an older folks home where I would spend weeks in the summer dumping medicine down the toilet. Well, we didn't think far enough ahead. That's all ending up in our water. We need to make sure that we're properly disposing of our medicine. Just throwing a bottle into the trash is not safe. People go through our trashes. We need to make sure our name is off any pill bottle, and that those pills are properly disposed of. In Beaverton and Gladwin and Clare, we have options at the city police departments and the Clare County Sheriff's Department. They're 24 hours a day. You just drive by and drop it in a little drop box. It looks like a video slot at Beaverton City Police, and it looks like a mailbox in Gladwin City Police. If that's not an option for you, mixing your medicine with something that is gross, like a dirty diaper, use kitty litter, and then putting it in a plastic or metal container and then in the garbage is a good option. We're going to move on to bath salts. This is what the judge had talked about, and when this first came on the news, my mom had called me up and said, "Oh my gosh, I have drugs in my home." And I said, "Mom, you do not have drugs in your home. If you can buy this at Walmart or Meijer's, it is not something you're going to use in a bath. This is not the drug we're talking about." Often these drugs are named for things that can just get past a parent or get past a consumer. No one's going to look at a bath salt inside of a gas station like, okay, that's kind of weird, I'm not going to buy bath salts here. It's a very serious drug. Both bath salts and K2 or spice, which we'll talk about in a minute, have been made illegal in Michigan. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that people are not using them, especially young people. The good side effects, the reason people are taking them is it's an upper. It makes someone feel good. People are taking this for reasons, they're feeling anxious, they're feeling upset, so they take these drugs. But on the same side, the negative side effects can be very dangerous. It can speed up our heart and cause some serious anxiety, some psychosis. We don't know how long these side effects can last because this is kind of a newfangled drug. Bath salts can be very dangerous when it comes to hallucinations. If you get online and you search in YouTube, put in bath salts, you'll see some pretty scary things that people are doing because they're seeing things or hearing things when they're on bath salts. Spice K2 is, some people call it a synthetic marijuana. This came from a pharmaceutical company who was trying to mimic marijuana so they could sell it. They could sell it as a prescription. What happened was they started testing on animals and it wasn't even safe for testing on animals, so they shelved it and decided we can't use this. Unfortunately, someone got their hands on it and started making it available to the public. Unlike marijuana, this has some different side effects because it is anywhere from 20 to 200 times as strong as the marijuana that typically was raised in the 70s and 80s. Good side effects are similar to marijuana. Unfortunately, when I've had young people in my office talking to me about spice, they talk about, well, you can't smell it like you can marijuana. It doesn't cause red eyes. So, unfortunately, young people are thinking it's much more safe because it doesn't have these side effects that other people can see. Most drug tests don't test for spice, so it's not that big of a deal, when we know, unfortunately, that's not true at all. Some of the negative side effects are very similar as bath salts. We've seen quite a few people in the emergency room in our area, especially the Midland area, from spice K2 because it's easy to overdose on. And the long-term side effects of this we still don't know. There was a young lady who a year ago took this drug. She was from CMU, she was at a party downstate. She took this drug and she is still currently in a psychiatric facility in Grand Rapids because they don't know when or if she will ever get out of her psychosis. She still is delirious, she's still having delusions. It's a very scary substance. I'm going to finish with some more things to worry about. These are things I hear about, I see about on the news. I do want to tell you that there is no way to go over all the new things that are coming. It is not unsafe to search new drugs. There are lots of good websites, and I put some in the brochure that you have. If you hear of something, and you're more than welcome to call my office, we have some cards here. But what I'm probably going to do is Google as well, because all this stuff comes to me. The quickest way to find out is the internet. Unfortunately, that's why these things spread so quickly. It's because they're on the internet. Your kids know about it. Kids all over these schools probably know more about these drugs than sometimes even we could possibly find out. Some of the things you'll see in here is cough syrup. It is very serious, and I know in Gladwin County we have a lot of young people who are drinking cough syrup to get high. It's very unfortunate because the side effects of cough syrup can be quite deadly. We have a new drug that's similar to bath salts called Smiles. I apologize for the cutoff in the PowerPoint. This is a drug that is south of us right now. We have not seen a case of it. I contacted Michigan Poison Control today. We haven't seen it yet in Michigan, but it's very similar to bath salts, and they are seeing it in places like Ohio and Wisconsin. I hear this all the time. Parents call me out of the office and ask me if these things are true. Gummy bears can be, if you put alcohol in it, they absorb the alcohol and they can be eaten. It's very easy to see because they don't look like the little chewy gummy bears they clump up. It can be dangerous, but these are things that are all over the internet. In fact, that's been on the news for the past 4 to 5 months. These are not secrets. And believe me, your kids, the kids in here, very often knew this stuff before I had any idea. Hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is something you should keep near you. You should make sure you know where your hand sanitizer is. If you look on the back, it is mostly alcohol. A lot of schools now, and I saw it in here too, they have the foam hand sanitizer so people can't just drink it. A lot of teachers don't even have the pumps on their desk anymore because it is very dangerous. If you're addicted to hand sanitizer, if you need to have it because you're afraid of germs, my advice is always to get a very smelly one, like lots of scent, because they taste a little bit more bitter. And that, fortunately, might get somebody to stop drinking it. There are a lot more things that I have. I brought all kinds of references, things that we can look at. I wanted to show you some of the ways that people hide drugs. Although these are kind of expensive ways to hide drugs, these are all stash cans that someone can buy, throw in a backpack, and no one's going to know what they have. They look just like any other, you can open this up supposedly and you've got one doing it. But the most common way to store a pill, this one opens the bottom too, and it works. The most common way to store a pill is like in an ink pen. So you just want to be aware that we feel like it's not our kids, we feel like it can't happen to us, but unfortunately it can, and very often it's in most of our families. And even if it's not your kid, kids are not, their brain does not work completely. The brain's not completely functioning. So we have to make sure to protect them, and making sure we're monitoring, securing, and disposing correctly of our drugs, of our medicines are going to be the biggest prevention effort that we can have. So I'm going to stick around for questions, but we want to make sure to get through this as quickly to respect your time. So I'm going to hand it back over to the judge.
Sarah. All right, our next speaker this evening is going to be Jeff Bunch. Many of you probably know Principal Bunch. Jeff is currently principal at Beaverton Middle School. He has 25 years of administrative experience at the principal level. He became involved in the bullying issue about 15 years ago when he saw that it was becoming the single most disruptive factor in his middle school. At Beaverton Middle School, he brought in experts in the field to teach the students and the staff about bullying and the ways to combat it. Beaverton Middle School now has a very strong anti-bullying program where bullying behavior is not tolerated. He continues to learn more and more about this problem in hopes that his experiences with bullying can be lessons to all students, parents, staff, and community members. This time, I'll give a good welcome to Mr. Bunch.
Wonderful turnout. Thank you very much, Sarah. Pretty hard to follow up on yours. But first of all, I want to let you guys know that bullying is a real problem. And I'm sure that almost all of your kids have brought it home at one point or another. And bullying has always been a problem. Just to let you know that it happens to everybody. I was bullied my senior year in high school. I was the quarterback of the football team. I played basketball. I had everything going for me and stuff, and I had a bully that made my senior year absolutely miserable. And I did nothing about it. My father was assistant principal at my high school in Bay City, and I never told him. And my dad's 88 years old right now, and I still didn't tell him because I'm embarrassed. I'm really embarrassed that I let this kid get to me. And I'm 54 years old right now, and I still remember this kid. And he may be, a pillar of society right now, but my experience for 1 year in high school has affected me to this day. And that really is what happens to a lot of kids. is that one little experience for them can really alter a lot of things that they do. There's really 4 things that I wanted to cover tonight, about what you need to know. And the first one is what is a definition? Because as a building principal, I get all sorts of calls from parents saying, my kid's being bullied. What are you going to do about it? And I think that Beaverton Middle School has a pretty strong program compared to other schools. And some people may not think that. But the one definition, if I think we can go to the next one, is that it has to be repeated and it has to be on purpose. So if you're being bullied, once, if some kid pushes you in the hall, or some kid makes a comment about your hair or about your clothes, and it really isn't a repeated offense, that's really not bullying. That's more of a conflict that you may have, or that your student may have with another student. And if it goes away, that's what we want. Another thing about bullying is there's an imbalance of power. And what we mean is kids have status in the schools. And everybody knows that. You got the cool group, and you got the nerdy group, and you got the jocks, and you've got these. There's all sorts of status throughout there. And there is an imbalance of power. It can be that I come up to you with 4 people, 4 of my friends, there's an imbalance of power. Or I'm the popular kid in school and you're not. There's an imbalance of power. I'm bigger than you are. There's an imbalance of power. When you have 2 kids who are equal, it's hard to say that it's bullying. And when parents call me up and say, this kid's bullying my kid, I have to look at a whole bunch of different factors to see if it really is. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a problem or an issue going on, but we have to approach these issues in a different way than we would with bullying. Another thing is that it's intentional and it's aggressive. That if you're walking down the hallway, you're getting pushed every hour by the same kid. It's repeated and it's intentional. A lot of times things happen, especially in middle schools, where stuff just happens all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bullying. It's just kids having conflicts. It can be accidents, and we need to look at it that way. But if it's intentional and it's aggressive, then we may have a bullying situation. The difference between bullying and conflict is really what I just said. We can have kids who have conflicts. A couple kids get into a scrap. That could just be a conflict. It doesn't mean that there's some bullying going on. But because your kid gets beat up, doesn't mean that he's been bullied. Or your kid beats somebody up, doesn't mean that your kid is a bully. And it's real important as a building administrator for all of us to be able to recognize that. Because like I say, we're going to deal with this differently. Because in a bullying situation, the last thing that you want to do is you want to bring those kids together to try to do conflict resolution. Because it doesn't work. Because there's an imbalance of power going on there. They sit down there, this kid who's being bullied is scared to death because of this kid's power. You can't do that. Now, if you have a conflict and they're on equal footing, you might be able to work this out. If they're best friends, all of a sudden they're having a problem with one another. There's a conflict that the counseling department can handle, that I can handle, that sometimes parents can handle. So it's real important that you recognize what is bullying and what isn't bullying. And these 3 are really the linchpins of these. If you have any of these 3, you may have a bullying situation. There's been a definitive program in Denmark by a researcher, and it's really one of the only ones that we've had that's really, they looked at thousands and thousands of kids in bullying. And they came up with this cycle of bullying. In A, you start out with the bully. And you guys can all recognize this as adults. And kids, you can too. I know you can. B, there's the followers or the henchmen. And they may even carry out the extra. You got the bully, he's walking up, he's got his buddies with him. Okay? So that's another one. Then you've got the supporter. And he's maybe part of the bullying, or maybe it's a guy on the football team who's the bully, and it's somebody on his team. He's not really participating in it, but he's kind of there. And then you've got the passive supporter that, you know, it might seem like he is, but he's not. He's just watching. Because if you know middle school and you know high school, the word fight goes up in conflict, boom, everybody is there. And they're just watching. Then you have the disengaged, the onlooker, those people who just kind of wander into it. Then you have the passive person who dislikes the bully, but doesn't know how to say something. And we've all been there as kids and as adults. Adults can be bullies too. How many of us as adults have seen bullying going on in an adult setting and don't say anything about it? It happens all the time. All the time. And we see it as administrators and educational people all the time. I'll be honest with you, you know, people come in and try to bully me when there's something going on with the kids, and I'll be perfectly honest with you even more, there's times when I have to back it up and go after them and show my imbalance of power with them in order for them to back down a little bit. It just happens. But it shouldn't be intentional, but there are adults and there are kids out there who do this intentional stuff. And then there's the defender, and the one that we really want, who goes out and says something about it, and that's what we want everybody to be. We want kids to rally around, we want adults to rally around and say, this is not acceptable behavior in our school, in our community. That's what we want. We want people to speak up, and it's hard. It's really hard because they think that there's always going to be retribution. If I say something, it's going to happen. And I get this from parents all the time, and I can tell you it is 100%, all right, 99.9% true that your kids will come home and say, geez, if I tell, I'm going to get in even more trouble. And for most of the cases, that is not true. It just gets worse. Because I know, when I was a senior in high school, I know, because I sat on that and I was miserable all year long. Absolutely miserable. Because this guy was getting to me every day. And I didn't say anything, and I didn't ask for help. And especially when you're younger, if you don't ask for help, it's just going to get worse. So let's take a look at bullying and the health in bullying. There seems to be, now these are generalizations, there seems to be a link between bullying and poor health. Now, I don't know if that's mental health or what, but when the kids get bullied, I think you see more absences. Kids don't want to go to school. Anxiety levels go up, and when all that stuff goes up, there may be some health issues. Now, this isn't a bullying situation, but my daughter's in nursing school. If any of you have ever been through nursing school, that's pretty high-level stress. And when Laura gets ready to take some of these classes, her stomach acts up and she's miserable. When she's in the summer vacation, she's fine. And the same thing happens to your kids. When they get anxious and they know that they have to go into a bullying situation, whether it's at school or at home or wherever, there can be some health issues that really arise from this. ADHD, I think most of us are familiar with that. These kids, according to the data, are 4 times as likely to bully and to be bullied. Why? I'm not real sure, but that's what the data tells us. That they are going to be 4 times more likely to be a bully. Depression. There was a story several years ago about a college kid being bullied. He was gay, and his roommate did a horrible thing and put him on, taped him, and put it on Facebook, YouTube, whatever, and the boy ended up killing himself. Now, one thing in the training that I have had is that we need to be really, really careful about this stuff. Is that bullying is not the cause of suicide. The depression is the cause of suicide, or one of the causes. Bullying may be part of it. And if bullying is part of it, we want to get that out, obviously. But so many kids hold this stuff in, then they become depressed. And then that leads to all sorts of other issues that we have. Bullied students, the data tells us, are 8 times more likely to have depression than other kids. So if you know some student who is depressed, you may want to take a look and see if there's some bullying situations going on at school. There may be a link. I'm not saying that there is, but there may be a link. Students who bully may have conduct disorders. Now, those of us in the trade and in education know that there's ODD and all sorts of conduct disorders. Those things are coupled with bullying. They may be bullies themselves, but if we don't correct those things early on, the data says that stuff leads to things in the adult world. And then they start getting into the court systems when they're adults, because if that stuff hasn't been broken when they're adolescents, they may end up becoming criminals later on in their lives. So school misbehavior, I really take a hard look at that too. When we have kids who are continually misbehaving, there's almost always a bullying situation going on. Either they're being bullied or they are bullying someone else. And like I just said, that bullying is a gateway behavior to more serious behavior later in life. It's almost like they said, marijuana is a gateway drug. Bullying can possibly be a gateway behavior to more serious criminal activity later on in life. These are the reasons why we take a stand at Beaverton Middle School. Not always successfully, I want you to know that. Because nobody can be 100% successful, but we never poo-poo the issue. And here is something that really hits home, and this data is a little bit old, but the United States is going to lose $1.4 million for each student who drops out of school in productivity over a lifetime. $1.4 million. And a lot of bullies are dropouts, and a lot of kids who are bullied drop out. So, some myths. Bullies have low self-esteem. I think that we've heard that, and as parents, we like to say that to our kids. When you're having a conflict, oh well, he doesn't think real highly of himself. He wants to make himself feel better by making you feel worse. That's not it. That's not it at all. They are predators. They know what they're doing. They are bullies. That has nothing to do with their self-esteem. They know exactly what they're doing. And then, again, bullying causes suicide. Bullying does not cause suicide. Depression is the main reason why people commit suicide. Bullying may be a factor, but you can't say my kid was bullied, therefore it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of other things involved in that. Here's one that we as adults never had to worry about before, because going back to my senior year in high school, when I went home, I got away from it. I didn't go to parties and stuff like that because I knew he was going to be there. I didn't go out in the community, in places that I knew he was going to be, but I could get away from it. Now you can't, because I get it so often with parents telling me, I got Mr. Budge, Facebook. So-and-so is calling my kid name, threatening my kid on Facebook. It's 24/7 now. Kids can't get away from it. And what we suggest, and what the state police have told us as educators at a couple workshops that I've had, is that you document everything, and if it becomes too much of a problem, you call the police, because they have now special units devoted just for cyberbullying. So, parents talk to me, they say, Mr. Budge, here it is. They're bullying my kid, because goes to school. We can give him the pat answer and tell him, well, you know, it's not happening at school because there's nothing I can do about it. And that's a cop-out. Because everything evolves around the school. You guys know that. The kids know that. So what we tell them is, parents, get that stuff printed out. And if it's too much of a problem, go ahead and call the police. Let them deal with it because it is a crime. Cyberbullying is a crime. And cyberbullying is a 3-day seminar easily that you can deal with. And I have in the past. Okay, prevention. And this is where we try so hard at Beaverton Middle School, and everybody needs to try hard at home and everywhere. And I just want to, first thing is, as a building principal, what I want to tell you as parents is don't make the situation any worse than it is. Because what I get is I get angry parents. Parents who are angry sometimes don't always do, people who are angry sometimes always don't do the right things. And they want to get involved in it, and they, especially with the cyberbullying, they want to start typing it up and putting things in. Parents, don't make the situation worse than it already is with the kids. Come to somebody's, bring it to my attention, bring it to your principal's attention, bring it to the school's attention. We have some ways of dealing with it. Mostly successful, but not always successful. The silent majority. You have to encourage your child to talk about it and to report it. That's what we try to do at Beaverton Middle School. Not always successfully, because the kids will say, well, if I report it, I'm going to get in more trouble. And it really doesn't work that way. I can tell you from my standpoint, I never give up a student's identity to anybody. Although, so many times it's pretty obvious what's happening, who's saying it. But you have to let your child know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to report it. Because if they don't, it will continue. I guarantee you it will continue. The discipline as far as school goes. When I got to Beaverton Middle School 6 years ago, the number one problem was bullying. And so we brought in a gal who's a bullying expert, nationally known speaker. And she did workshops with us for a couple of years with all of our kids, with all of our teachers. And it was really an enlightenment for all of our kids. Because they knew what the difference was between bullying and conflict. Because that was important for them to know. And it also was important for them to know how to deal with it, things to say, things to do to combat bullying. And one of the biggest things a school could do is have a rigid discipline policy. Now, I'll just tell you from my standpoint that I've had at Beaverton Middle School, as far as bullying goes, the first time I get a report of bullying, the student is in my office, and 99% of the time I call home and say, Mom and Dad, this is what I'm hearing. Would you please talk to your child? And it's documented. We have a documentation program in our Skyward, and I have filled that stuff out like crazy. And I document everything. And then if they come back, and I say, you know what, we've already dealt with this. Now there's some consequences. And we have posters up all over the building. It's in their handbooks on what happens when you bully at Beaverton Middle School. And if you walk down the halls of Beaverton Middle School, and they're narrow halls, and I'm very proud of this fact, because I've been told this, you don't get a lot of pushing and shoving. It's loud because they're middle school kids, obviously. But the teachers are out in the hallway. They're watching things, and when adults are out there watching things, very few things happen. I'm very proud that we have very few fights, and that when kids walk down the hall, they feel relatively safe. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, I can guarantee you that. And some of my kids here can tell you. But I think for the most part, they know that they're safe when they walk down the hallway to Beaverton Middle School. And I've been told that by substitutes and Sarah herself that she enjoys coming to Beaverton Middle School because kids aren't shoving each other and making comments all the time, although that does happen occasionally. But when it does, there's usually an adult there to correct the behavior. I talked about forced mediation. That's the difference between conflict and bullying. It's a bad idea to put bullies in the same room to try to work things out because of that imbalance of power. It's not going to happen. The bully is always going to come out on top. Always. Because they're going to leave there, you know, yeah, okay, they know what's going on. If it's a conflict, that's something different. You can work on those things. But what I get from parents in a bullying situation a lot of times is, well, I want to come in and I want to meet with those kids. We're going to have this out. It doesn't work. It just makes it a lot worse for the kid. And that's part of the parents letting us do the job. And if you know what, if we don't do the job, then you need to step in, obviously. If you don't think that we're doing the job, step in. But give us the chance first. At least it's going to tone down some. But I get very few repeat kids who come back and say, well, it's continuing. Now, whether or not they're telling me, I can't answer that. But I'm hoping that what I have done or what the teachers have done, what the school has done is actually continuing. But we still have bullying, we still have conflicts, we still have drama, and that's never going to change because that's the nature of being in middle school. Tolerance. We have to teach tolerance with our kids. That if somebody's different, that doesn't make them targets. You know, they may be a different color, they may be a little odd, they may be different than somebody else, but that does not make them a target, and it better not be a target. One-time programs, and we see this in education all the time. If we have an assembly about something, kids are all revved up about it for a day or two, and then it's forgotten. We've all been in those assemblies, right? It's really cool. Wow, that was a neat thing. You give them a week, they don't even know what it was about. I'll be honest with you, last year before, we had these kids in, these BMX bike guys in, and they were really cool, and they were doing stuff. And they had this wonderful message. Remember that, Stephanie? Remember those guys? You remember that, Theo? Kinda? There you go. You remember the message that they were sending? One-time program. But if you're continually on them, every month you're doing this, you're sending stuff out, that's the sort of stuff that you're getting. The second thing, the next thing is the adult education. You guys as parents need to be educated on it. Make sure you know what bullying is and what to do about it. Don't get yourself too involved, because I know you want to be protective of your kids, and that's what parents do. There have been plenty of times when I wanted to throttle somebody who was, doing something with my kids. But you have to back up. It's almost like being that parent in the stands when your kid's playing volleyball or basketball. They're not quite getting the playing time that you think they deserve. If you're out there hammering the coach, you think that makes it better? You think they're going to get more playing time? No. And as a former coach and stuff, with my daughter, I had to bite my tongue all senior season long with volleyball. She was the best player out there, but she wasn't getting the playing time. And it was, oh my gosh, it was hard for me to stay uninvolved. But she would have been mortified if I would have been too involved. And you guys know how that is. You know, it doesn't pay. In the long run, it just doesn't pay. Let the kids work a lot of this stuff out with the help of the adults in the program. And I'm not saying don't get involved, parents, but don't get so involved that you get caught up in the emotion. Because if you do that, nobody's going to win. All you're going to do is get angry. And that's the worst thing that can happen. You're not going to solve anything. Supervision. You know, you talk about cyberbullying, especially middle school, even adults. You better know what those kids are doing on their computers. That Facebook stuff, I'm not even on it. God knows what I'm saying about me out there. Facebook. But, you know, Theo?
Yeah.
Oh, what are they saying? Go ahead.
I do know one thing that's good. My parents have me and my older sister Jolene's Facebook account, username and password. So if anything is going on, they can hop on and see what's going on.
Excellent. That's exactly what we need. We need more parents like that who know what their kids are doing. Yes, sir.
I also am on Facebook, and sometimes people will get on me because I wear Western wear, so imagine block.
There you go.
On Facebook.
That's it. That's it. But as parents, know what your kids are doing. Do you know where they go for in high school? Do you know where they're going for a party? bullying stuff. If you don't know what's happening with your kids, there's not a lot that you can do, and they can get themselves in trouble because they still are kids. And another thing that we have to model the behavior that we want our kids to do. You know, I hate to say it, but if you're a smoker, chances are your kids may be smokers too, because they see that it may be okay to do that. And that's a personal choice that you have. But if you're an angry parent, and you come in and you start screaming at people, chances are that's the way your kids behave in school too. And that old adage, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, is exactly it. There's a lot of different things. And I see so many great parents out there who are calm, they want to solve problems, and they show their kids how to solve problems. Whether it's with bullying or conflict or whatever, they're out there and they're doing the right thing, they're going through the right steps. And they're showing their kids that this is the way it goes. And keeping that emotion out of it is really something. You might want to take some of these resources down, especially for the middle school kids, and I think they're in the flyer. These are some really neat, and I get most of my information from these. These are neat websites that you can go in and talk to your kids about. And it has all sorts of things with bullying. It has personal accounts that are going on. They're just really, really good stuff. And then also, recommended readings, and I want to thank Katie Fisher. Katie works at the middle school and has for years, and she's wonderful. She went to the library and looked up a whole bunch of books that were appropriate for kids and parents to read together. And they have all to do stuff with bullying. So I think that would be it. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Sarah for helping me put together, she put together the PowerPoint because she knows my technical skills aren't there. But I really have a passion for this, and I may not be perfect, and I may get criticized sometimes for doing what I do, but I try to do what's right with kids, and I really feel that bullying, if a student cannot come to the school and feel safe, especially emotionally, they're not going to learn. And if they don't learn, we are causing them a disservice. So I know Sarah and I will stay after.
Judge Farrell, can I wrap it up?
Oh, Judge Farrell, thank you for wrapping it up. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Just a couple of things we want to bring to your attention. We have a couple other individuals we'd like to introduce, and we have Julie Wright, who is over here, my right, your left side of the room. Julie is the community education nurse at Mid-Michigan Medical Center here in Gladwin, and she has a great stand set up, so we encourage everyone before you leave, pick up some of the materials that she has brought in Michigan. The hospital has been a great supporter of all of our programs. Secondly, Sarah wanted me to bring this to your attention as well. You see a number of us wearing the red ribbons, and for those of you that know there's a lot of causes out there, a lot of ribbons being worn. This is Red Ribbon Week, and Red Ribbon Week is the oldest and largest drug prevention campaign in the nation, which reaches out to millions of students and community members with the message of saying no to drugs. And Red Ribbon Week runs from October 24th through October 31st of each year. And if you have a chance, we have some red ribbons, we have some wristbands that we've been wearing, and put that on in support for yourselves, for your children, and we'll be happy to pass those out to everyone. One last note, I would like to let everyone know, for those of you that have seen Sarah, Judge Mink, and myself, and other supporters, we have a great program that has now been instituted in the Gladwin and Clare County courts. This is known as the Gladwin County Recovery Court Program. Just probably 20 years ago, there were not any recovery courts in this nation. We're now at over 2,500 drug and recovery courts. And so what we had done, Judge Mink and I got together, felt that this substance abuse issues with the overdose deaths that we're dealing with, high schoolers and We don't typically see, obviously, the middle schoolers, but we felt that substance abuse in this area was significant enough that we needed to develop a special court just to deal with these types of offenders. And we were fortunate enough to have about $20,000 of training provided to our 13-member dual county team. We received a $20,000 grant in our first year of operation. We just received notice about 3.5 weeks ago that we've now received another $35,000 grant. And we now have, I believe, approximately 5 to 6 members in the program. And essentially what we do is we recognize. We will have these individuals screened for eligibility upon their arrest. We will have assessments completed to determine if they're good candidates, and we basically own these people for 18 to 24 months. And I know that sounds bad, but we take control of every aspect and provide assistance with housing and education and recovery and AA. There's a punishment phase that we implement as well, but we offer a lot of incentives. There's sanctions for setbacks, and we basically work with these individuals to assist with their recovery. So I'm proud to be a part of it, proud to have a great team from both counties, and we have members from the prosecutor's office, each of the sheriff's departments, probation department, 1016. And so again, we're trying to get that word out within the community. This is not a hug-a-thug program like some people might refer to it. We do punish these individuals, but we also assist these people. Typically what we see is about 87% of offenders for low and higher severity crimes oftentimes have substance abuse involved with the crimes that they're committing. If we just simply throw them in the jails, once they're released, they're still alcoholics, they're still drug abusers, they still don't have their GED, they still don't have housing. They still have abusive family members. And so we are taking them from the minute of their arrest and working with them. So we hope to have great success with the program. I'm happy to say that Paul Gravlin, who many of you know from Gladwin County, is our recovery court coordinator, who's doing a fantastic job. Wrote for the grant that we just received. And so things are going very well. And Sarah, anything else that...
Talk really, talk often. There is a program coming up in Clare. It's free. You should be going home and talking to your kids about these things, excuse me. But if you have a hard time talking to your kids, it's a program that's free, it's open. They're going to teach you how to talk to your kids about tough subjects. Julie has flyers. It is a really good program. It's nationally recognized to really get parents to be able to open up and just talk to your kids about things that are tough. So Julie's going to have that stuff. We have all kinds of giveaways over here. Make sure that you're talking to someone. If you have questions about recovery court, we have Paul and Judge, and we have Judge Mink, we have Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we have Shelter House. So please, make sure to ask us questions if you have them.
One thing I'd like to let all of you know before we conclude, parents, use discretion, but a couple of things that we are seeing in the courts, the worst calls that we take, and we've taken a lot in the last several years, are parents that are losing high school, college-age students. I had received a call from a mother that stated she was taking her 20-year-old off life support. This is an issue in Gladwin County. This is an issue in Clare County. It's an issue in the state of Michigan. So try not to be naive. Try to be aware of things. Know your surroundings. If any of you utilize YouTube, two very powerful videos that I would suggest. We were going to display one. We had some audio issues. During our symposium a couple of months ago, we were fortunate enough to have a contingent of professionals and ex-college student addicts and things that have come up that are working on recovery, and met some family members that have lost children. And one of those individuals, all of these are Michigan teens and college students, but if you insert in your search in YouTube the name Noah Johnston, that is a 7-minute powerful video of a family that lost their 18-year-old high school student right in Rochester, Michigan. And secondly, for the bullying aspect, I don't know if many of you heard of the recent suicide death of the teenager Amanda Todd. She was a young Canadian individual, but there's about an 8-minute video on there that use discretion, but it's very powerful. And she was bullied, moved schools several times, and these people, as Principal Butch stated, these bulliers followed her to other schools, not physically, but by way of internet and Facebook. And she just recently committed suicide. So it's a very, very serious problem, and we appreciate you coming out this evening. Thank you.